Hi, I'm Owen from Rask Australia. Thanks for tuning in to the Rask Network.
Before we get into today's show, there are a few things we have to go over.
Firstly, what you're about to hear and see is limited to general information only. It's not personal financial advice like you'd get from a financial planner. Also, it's important to remember that past performance is not indicative of future performance. That means that anything that's happened in the past, or we say today, is not necessarily going to reflect what happens in the future. Lastly, please consider that any of the guests or myself are featuring on this program may have a financial interest in some of the products or shares mentioned. That's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed today's program.
Kate, welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
It is wonderful to be back, Owen.
Yes, it's always wonderful when we get to record in the studio with a special guest. James, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. Now, I know you personally. Kate's got to know you today a bit more because you guys sat down and recorded a cash flow masterclass in our office or in our boardroom. So that's available on Rask Education. And we'd highly encourage anyone who's looking to get on top of their budget, understand where their cash flow goes, to take a look at everything that Kate and James have put together because it's really comprehensive. Mate, obviously I'm an informational advantage here. Can you fill us in a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Northeast, what you do, how you got involved in the industry? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are today.
Yeah, love to. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Well, financial advisor. I've been a financial advisor since 2009. I got a pretty easy step into the game. Both my parents were financial advisors. And so I was from 16, 17, I was sort of helping my dad out with some financial advisory documents and things like that.
Is that your part-time job during high school?
Part-time gig, that's right. And so, yeah, I was lucky enough really early to get a sense for the sort of, for the work. And then I really enjoyed particularly that element of helping people with their personal goals and the things that they want to achieve. And I think I was probably quite blessed because my parents didn't work for a big institution where it was all about the products. They worked for themselves and they had really tight relationships with their clients, and and it was all about goals, and it was all about personal outcomes and and relationships, and so that inspired me to get started and go down that journey. And obviously it was quite easy for me to go down that journey because I already had people in that group, in that career. I spent a little while working the family business, and then after not too long, went out on my own, went to some small practices, found myself at what I thought was this totally plum job. I was about 25 and I got a gig at the Commonwealth Bank as a financial advisor.
Oh, yeah.
And like as a 25-year-old, like my perception was just like, this is the pinnacle of advice. Yeah, like job done. Wonder what I'm going to do next in my life. And the experience was different. It especially coming from that small practice. Yeah, it was very, very much about the products and making sure that people were just given the products that were going to best suit them. The products were good, but it just missed the point. Like the whole point was around helping people make more progress and what outcomes they had, and this didn't really do any of that. So was a few years later, I finished up and went and started my own practice, and that's Northeast, and we're rolling along strong.
Yeah, it's great. What type of clients do you typically work with? Is it everyone or? No,
we're not everyone. No, so we're working with predominantly accumulators, pretty heavily accumulators. So they're those people that are they're making financial progress, working hard. Most of the people that we work with are pretty ambitious and have a real focus on trying to achieve more things in their lives. We work with quite a few with professionals and executives, but we've got some great members that are tradies that just they're just working super hard. And again, they sort of understand that, hey, we've got heaps of stuff we want to do in our lives, and we realize that if we're good with our money, that's probably going to help a long way toward doing that stuff.
Can I ask one more question on how you operate the business? Do people, when they contact you, I imagine there's a lot of people that listen to this, if they want to contact you, and they might be unsure if they're the right fit for you, do they call and say, this is who I am, and then you guys kind of triage clients that come through and say, oh, we're maybe not the right fit, but maybe someone else is? Is that how it tends to work?
Yeah, in a lot of cases. I often get asked about this question around sort of who should see a financial advisor, and it's very similar to that of the idea of seeing a personal trainer, I feel, because in many respects we do a similar role. It's not just about the execution; it's also about accountability. It's about having a plan and sticking to that plan, and then also people don't necessarily know what plans they want, so it's constructing it. The reason I use that analogy is if you think about a personal trainer, not everyone in the gym needs to see a personal trainer. If there are people that go to the gym or they have their own routine that's consistent, they're reliable, it exactly matches what they want to achieve. If a personal trainer ran up to them and said, "Hey, look, we just have to work together," they're entitled to say, "Well, why? I'm on track, life's good." But that doesn't make the role of personal trainer. It doesn't make it unvaluable. Because it's for the right person, those people that say, "Look, to be honest, I probably could have more discipline, or I am feeling a little bit lost. Even sure, I am rocking up to the gym most days, but frankly, I don't necessarily get all that much out of it, or I sabotage all of my progress with the things that I do on when I'm out of the gym in terms of diet." And they're the people that are going to get the most value from working with a PT, and they're the people that are going to get the most value from working with a financial advisor.
There's a lot of value in that, having someone that you can be accountable to and that can actually help you execute that plan, because we know a lot of our community, they find all the information, they research all the brokerage accounts, all the different options. And then when it comes to actually making a decision, executing, that's where a huge barrier is. And so having someone that you can talk to help you overcome that is a really important part of your financial journey.
Yeah, 100%. Analysis paralysis, right? We talk.
You get that with your clients a lot?
Oh, yeah. One of the questions that we ask every member that comes through, we ask them about how they make decisions, and because the role of an advisor is to help facilitate better decisions, right? And so we ask how decisive are you, and also how do you formulate your decisions? Are you the gut-based person over here, or are you the high detail scour the PDS type person? And what we find is that the scour the PDS people tend to be indecisive. The gut-based people tend to be quite decisive because the filtering to make a decision is smaller. And so you tend to make more decisions. Something that's interesting is that over time, I'm observing that the people that make more progress tend to actually be more gut-based. And I don't think that's because you make a better quality decision. I just think it's because you make more of them. If
more
you
action-oriented.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So spot on. That's a great thing that you guys do, of course, is to cut through so much of that noise, because finances in general are bloody noisy.
Oh, James, one of the areas that it's important to take some action, but most often we don't, because the word budgeting gets a really bad rap, and it just seems like a word that means we don't get what we want. Why do you think it gets such a bad rap, and why do we often bury our head in the sand when it comes to looking at what's coming in and out of our bank account each month?
Because you don't always get what you want, I think, is probably... I think that, firstly, the act of completing a budget is actually a pretty boring exercise. If you're one of those human beings that wakes up in the morning and is thrilled at the prospect of spending your Saturday doing a budget, then power to you, But you're a very, very small representation of the population if you're that person. So for the vast majority of people, firstly, it's overwhelming. Just inputting all that information and feeling like it's this huge mountain to climb in order to get it right. Maybe part of that comes from people feeling like if I'm going to do this perfectly, then it's going to take ages, which is a trap, because it doesn't have to be perfect. What you want is progress rather than something that's perfect. And in terms of people not being motivated to do it, I think that people don't necessarily have a good enough lens as to how much value it's going to add to actually do one.
So they don't know what the outcome is.
That's
right.
I
go through all this pain of looking at my bank,
What's the
bank
gain?
account. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
It's that for having taken a lot of members through it, I know firsthand. It's everything. It's so important when it comes to making almost all of your important financial decisions, and the quality of your financial decisions goes up 5-fold, 10-fold, just by such a huge number if you have confidence around those expenses. But yeah, for most people, that's that's a relative thing. You can't make a decision as an individual and say that decision was 3 times better because I did a budget. Because you don't have that baseline. You're not fortunate enough to see heaps of people doing it and be able to assess that they were good decisions and they were bad. So,
I wouldn't say people would let you look at their budget very often.
No.
I don't think anyone's shown me their personal budget.
No, it's even hard enough for couples to talk about, right? Hey, question: why do you call them like your clients members or members clients? Like, why is that? Why do you make that distinction?
It's actually a fairly new distinction that we've made. So it's not this thing that we've been doing for decades. But two reasons. The first reason is because our members really do have they have a real say in terms of how we go about what we do. I think we do a good task of getting our members' feedback to ask, hey, what are we doing well and what can we improve, and really taking that feedback on board, and that improves the experience for everyone. So that's one. But then the other part of it is, I think, just that separation of it's where we work together here. Now, if not just in terms of having events, for example, but also we're all in a similar situation as if we were to put all of our members in a room together and they were all to interact, that all reflect on the fact that, hey, we are all quite similar. We are all striving toward our own things that we want. And so we wanted it to feel more inclusive rather than just me on my own out here with my individual relationship with my advisor.
I've got to admit, I remember speaking to you not long ago about how you got feedback from your members and incorporated ESG into the investing mix as well. I know this is quite tangent to what we're going to talk about today, but I remember that because you were like, well, turns out a lot of the clients or members wanted that, so we now incorporate that as a big part, in fact, as the whole part.
The whole part now, yeah. We've now made that jump. So when someone gets in touch with us, if they said, hey, we love what you're about, everything is great, five family members are with you, and so we're in, just where do we sign? The only thing is we're not at all interested in sustainable investing. We'd say, okay, we're not a fit. We've got, that's our approach now. We're really committed to that. And that was driven initially by member demand. And then that was the thing that allowed us to say, let's start deep diving into this. And when we came out the other end, we said, hey, this is like, we're all in here. That's the right thing to do.
You mentioned a phrase before, process over perfection, and that kind of ties into what you're seeing with the gut feel of people. I think so many people listen to this show. I think you'd agree, Kate, that they just never take action. Like, some people will listen to this show for a year and not do one thing, which is fine. If you're listening, keep listening. But I think that's such a good phrase for describing the inertia that comes with making positive change. You don't need to do everything in one day, even just one thing, and then that compounds, the decision compounds. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah. And I've reflected many times on my own life, and even little moments in my life right now where I think, no, you're waiting to try to be able to serve something up and that's of a really high quality, when you would be better just getting started and saying, yeah, look, to be honest, in my own mind, it's only 70 or 80% done, but I've learned so much by getting that to 80% instead of just avoiding it and it's sitting on the sidelines over here until I can have all my ducks in a row to be able to fix it. Yeah, without a doubt, making incremental progress is just so much more valuable than trying to scale that mountain first time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that can be overwhelming with budgeting is just knowing where to start and what are those numbers you need to know. And I know the spreadsheet that we and you work through in that course is quite comprehensive. It has a lot of different things to fill in. It gives you a 5-year projection, which is great. And I'd say it's for more people that are ready to take the next step with their budgeting and their cash flow. But if someone's really new to figuring out what's coming in and out of their bank account, what would you say the key numbers you really need to know to get started with having a better understanding of your finances are?
Great question. The first metric, if you had only one, it'd be what's left every month. And that would have to be the dominant metric. If you're lucky enough to have $3,000 or $4,000 a month left over by the time that you receive your income, and then all of your expenses go out or higher, then hats off to you. You're in a really, really good. You're in a great place. And perhaps the conversation for you is not so much around how to better budget, but more so what should you be doing with that surplus. It's when that metric is tight. It's when we see that not only is that metric might be really low or perhaps even negative some months, but also think a lot of people right now are observing compression on that number, right?
Yeah, savings rate's going way down.
Yeah. For me personally, I have a first-hand experience of my savings rate deteriorating over the last 12 months quite significantly. And we're on fixed rates. So it hasn't been fixed rates that have done that. It's going to hurt a lot when that rolls through, of course, as it will for a lot of people. But I think knowing what that number is firstly, that can just be a really simple way of saying, do I need to take action on this or not?
I think, there's a lot to unpack there. I think one of the things that people tend to put up as like I wouldn't say it's a limiting belief, but it's definitely an artificial roadblock that they put in front of themselves, is they'll say something like, oh, well, I'm self-employed, I'm a tradie, which is what you just mentioned, or I run a business. We know millions of people run small or micro businesses in Australia. And so that their income is like up 1 minute, down the next minute, then it's 6 weeks before they get paid again, and they get paid twice in a row. Like, how do you deal with that?
That makes it a lot harder. Yeah. In a perfect world, all of our income would be linear and our expenses would be linear too. Like our expenses aren't the same.
Yeah.
We'll have a week where we don't need to spend much, and then you have your rego and your insurances and those sorts of things, and suddenly you have a big cost that come out. I like to look at this two different ways. When you have a business owner where you have that non-linear income, you might have a really successful week and then nothing. That's creating my experience is that's creating a lot of other problems in your cash flow. Now, if it's not creating problems in your cash flow, that tells me that the average amount that you're receiving is in excess of your expenses. And I say that because if it were equal to that of your expenses, then it would be creating tension, because anytime you're under that level, you start to feel like you're going backward and have that tension. I think there's even more value for a budget in this scenario, because if you're able to identify what your expenses are, then you can reverse engineer to know specifically what you need income-wise in order to be on track. And at the end of the day, above and beyond the good outcomes, hopefully, that we all get as business owners from our businesses. The businesses are there to serve us in terms of enabling us to be able to do our own things and live our own lives. And so if your business is not achieving that outcome, you need to know about it. You need to know by order of what magnitude, and then obviously what can I do at a business level in order to get that to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I know for me personally, like I actually had a lot of anxiety around budgeting because I had the business budget, which I was trying to balance, and that took almost all of my effort. So then when it comes to personal budgeting, I was almost like worn out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you would have clients that have businesses or even like side hustles and these types of things. Do you think of them as two discrete things, or do you try to bring it all, like in the spreadsheet that comes with the course, which is free, by the way, so go and check it out. Does that include business income?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. We try to keep it together, because I guess as an extension of that point that I just made, which is that the business, it has to serve its purpose for you as an individual, as the business owner, and a core part of that is being able to meet your expenses. And so we need to shine a light on if that's happening or if it's not happening. I 100% resonate with what you're talking about. The same experience as a business owner, of course. You've got two hats on, and it can be hard to manage both of those hats, of course. But I find that doing that becomes easier when you start personally. And there's not many things that I advocate that as a business owner where you just ignore the business, put yourself first. But it's that put your own oxygen mask on first concept. If you know what your expenses are, and then you know what income you need, so including tax and all those sorts of things, and also including some variable stuff that, hey, sometimes I'm not always going to hit that target. So maybe I inflate it a little bit to say that most of the time I always hit my minimum, and the excess I can save, whatever. In that scenario, you'll be so much better able to plan your business expenses and your business cash flow, because mental note, I'm putting myself first here. I'm taking arbitrarily $8,000 at the end of the month, for example. I'm taking that, and that's a fixed cost that comes out of the business. what happens often is that business owners, that becomes this variable what's left type conversation, which I think is a reality for a lot of business owners, where all the costs come and go, and then whatever's sort of left over I take. And again, that style of thinking is is fraught with danger unless you're smashing it, unless you're doing so well that cash flow is not a problem
you don't
anyway.
have a problem. Which is few people.
Hats off to you for those that do. Well played.
Yeah.
If you're trying to, if you've got past the point where you know what's left over each month and you're thinking, I'm ready to take the next step and have a bit more granular detail and actually make some projections on what my finances look like in the future, are you able to talk us through some of it's a bit hard because we don't have the spreadsheet in front of us and people are listening while they're on the train or walking the dog, but some of those features that you've included in the free spreadsheet that's in the course that people can work through, including some of those features, like you have the traffic light indicators to show people if they are on track or if there's a few things they need to work on.
Yeah, certainly. As a bit of background to this particular spreadsheet, this is version 17.
Right.
When did you start it?
2017.
Okay, it's been evolving for a while.
That was V1, yeah. And we set up this. We wanted this really comprehensive budget planner to give out to our members at the time, and so we put this thing together, and then we had some feedback. This doesn't have a line item, so we added some, and we just kept iterating and iterating and iterating. And last year, it was just so clear from all of our members that cash flow was like the number one thing. People were rightfully concerned about interest rates. They were concerned about inflation, and they're saying, I just want to know that I can still do those things that we said that we wanted to do as part of our plan, and I'm starting to feel uncertain about that. And so that's when we said, okay, we've got people's expenses and we've got people's income, and it shouldn't be that hard to turn this into something that models this out. I think initially it started off as basically like a maternity leave calculator to determine, because that's a common thing. Our members might say, we're going to spend some, going to take time off to have kids. What does that look like? And so it started there, and then it just continued to get iterated, and we're at version 17. As you mentioned, we've got this traffic light system which enables you to understand overall what do your expenses look like as a function of your income. Are you saving well? Are you saving poorly? Should you be making more progress? We break it down into discretionary and non-discretionary expenses. So we sit down with some members, for example, that their overall savings might be quite low, but then if you look at their behaviours are actually really good. It's just that so many of their costs are bills. They might be, they've got some investment properties and these sorts of things, and that's really pushing their expenses up. Now, of course, that's still a problem, because if your expenses are very close to your income, that's a problem regardless of the composition of it. But there's a big difference between that individual and the person who has almost no overheads but spends, $5,000 a month on just what I would perceive to be junk.
Yeah.
I deliberately word it that way. So you'll get a very clear breakdown as to what your expenses look like. You'll get a very clear breakdown as to, from a loans perspective, are your loans in good effect as a function of your income? Are your loans manageable? What happens if interest rates go up by 1%, 2%, 3%? What does that actually do to your monthly cash flow? Which is a question we're getting heaps. It models stage 3 tax cuts, which is something that I think a lot of people have sort of forgotten about. That was legislated by the Liberal government a few years ago now, and Anthony Albanese said that, hey, I'm not going to touch these, and they roll through in July of 2024. So that's not that far away, and if your income is above $120,000, then you're probably going to be the beneficiary of it. If your income is above $220,000 or thereabouts, you're about $9,000 better off every year just in your pocket. So when your payslip comes out in July of 2024, you're going to have an extra like $750 in your payslip without having done a thing, without a change in your salary. So that's a really meaningful change in people's income. So all those things that the known knowns, so to speak, we've put all of those in. And then also, for example, with fixed rates and things like that, if you are listening to this and you have a fixed rate that is going to expire, I know exactly what the impact is going to be right now when my fixed rates expire, which is in November. And I know because I can enter the information. It says, hey, when that expires, here's going to be the increase, and this is what it's going to do to your cash flow.
Because there's a lot of uncertainty around that at the moment. And a lot of people we've seen in our community going, I'm not sure what it's going to do to my finances when my fixed rate term expires.
Yeah.
Download the spreadsheet.
No, well,
Link
a lot
in
of
the show
people do.
notes.
Like our most popular episodes lately have been like improve your cash flow. Like, and it's because people, why do we say that? It's because the other two things that are implicit in that is inflation and interest rates.
Yeah.
Because those two things, like you said, you're on fixed rates personally, but like you're feeling the squeeze of inflation anyway. And then if you add in variable interest rates, it's like a double whammy. So the answer is, well, I need to get better with my cash flow, because in many cases, people's incomes aren't keeping up. In most cases, I'd say.
Definitely not over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
There'd be very few incomes that have kept up.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you include.
Especially with the cost of groceries going up.
Kate's at the fruit monger regularly just to keep those
It's my
costs
personal
down.
project, keeping my groceries down at the moment. I think
I'd love a podcast about that.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing when we were going through the cash flow spreadsheet was those projections as well, the 5-year projections, because in the course, and you'll have to watch the free course to see this, but we included some examples of planning for maternity leave and planning for a holiday and a house upgrade and how that impacts your cash flow, so you can see how the decisions you make over the next 5 years actually are going to impact your day-to-day.
Yeah. This has been really, really cool to talk with members about this, which is that if we know what your liquid savings are, for example, let's say that you got $30,000 in savings, for instance, and if you're going up by $3,000 a month, well, we can track what that looks like, and then you can freely add any of those variables that you want. I think we've built it pretty easily so that you can go in and you can drop in the things that you actually want to do. You can drop in the holidays, you can drop in the mat leave, you can drop in the new car purchase, any of those sorts of things that you think are realistic in the coming years, you can put in. And the purpose of that, of course, is it just allows us to understand what's on the horizon. I mean, we struggle with day-to-day cash flow, speaking more broadly, like as people. Most people struggle with day-to-day. So if you struggle with day-to-day, you've got no real capacity to understand 12, 24, 36, 48 months away. So yeah, I think we've done a pretty good task of that. It's pretty well set out.
Do you also get members coming through to you having completed this spreadsheet and going, what I want to do is actually not achievable on my current level of income?
Yeah. That's happening more often than we'd like it to right now, and it's a shame because it requires it means that we have to make changes, and no one likes making changes to their plans, of course. Not when they're
You're
not
supposed to have
positive
the
changes.
answers as a financial
Yeah,
advisor.
that's
Help
right.
me, wave the wand. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. So yeah, these are real conversations we're having. At this point, for a lot of our members, it's not so much around you can't do this at all. It's if you are to do this, we have to change what we prioritize, or alternatively, we have to be more comfortable with the fact that we previously said we want a minimum of this much in savings always, and our numbers are really clear. You're going to go below that number if you do everything that you want in the order and the timing that you've outlined. So they're difficult conversations, but I really love having them, in the sense that I'd much rather tell someone that, have the opportunity to tell someone that, hey, we're running in the dark and there's a brick wall in front of us. I want to be able to say that to people, and of course this allows us to do that.
Yeah, you can shine a light on their finances.
Yeah,
Giving you more time to sort of anticipate those trade-offs you might have to make, or you might have to push the new house upgrade back by a year or two because the focus is affording paternity leave at the moment.
With this spreadsheet and the course generally, would you advise people in a relationship, do you think it would be better if they took it together or went through the spreadsheet together, or, I guess just any general idea around that? Because like you do with clients that are in couples all the time, right?
Yeah. We yes, almost always. I think doing it together, firstly, you get to doing the exercise together, I think, is valuable. There's a natural accountability that comes with saying, finishing dinner and saying, we said tonight, Tuesday, 8:00, we were going to do the budget. So let's sit down, let's not turn on binge, and let's do the budget, for example. But then when I think that if you're a team, so to speak, if you share your finances, then having the ability to both work together on your finances and understand what the numbers are, I think that it delivers better outcomes. Now we've got members that say, look, we're in a financial sense, we're not a team. We might have
which seems to be more common than ever in our community.
Yeah, definitely. And that's easy enough. In that scenario, I'd advocate each do it, and then you'll have your own numbers to be able to stay accountable to. So I always offer simplicity where possible. If you have that arrangement whereby when you go to buy groceries for your household, you're both tapping out of the same bank account, for example, or I'm tapping some and you're tapping the other, but it all sort of works out in the wash, then absolutely doing it together, I think, is the best outcome. If alternatively you've got that arrangement where financially these costs are mine and these costs are yours, and there's good separation there, then you can absolutely keep it that way.
And how do you deal with the conversations where people in a relationship, because I know we get a lot of questions around this topic, might have slightly different or majorly different financial goals?
Very carefully.
Very carefully.
Everyone always has different goals, and I think the bigger issue here is often that people have different levels of importance that are held against those goals. So you might have a couple that come in that say that say, look, we're really clear on what we want to achieve in the coming 5 years. We want X and Y and Z. But for one member of the couple is absolutely hell-bent on doing that stuff, and the other one is sort of, I don't mind if we do it in 5 or if we do it in 10, like where life's good and there's no rush. That's really common to get that level of that separation. And so for us, the conversation becomes very much around trying to find mutually agreeable outcomes. Often that might require that this dogged focus that one member of a couple has to cut down absolutely everything until we can go and achieve that tremendous goal. Well, maybe they need to water that down a little bit, because that's actually not consistent with both of your views, and vice versa. The other person might say, look, to be honest, I'm happy in this current house, hypothetically. I don't really need the upgrade, but I know it's important to you and I get that it would make sense. I don't feel like we need it in 2 years, but I know that you want it sooner rather than later. So, okay, let's be a team and let's find a common ground here so that we know what we're doing.
This is a totally different question, but I'm imagining you have clients of all walks of life from different demographics, backgrounds, and age groups. When you think about the spreadsheet and what you've put together, including all of the course and everything for free, do you imagine, my question is kind of, as people get older, are they more willing to do this or less willing? Have you come across anything like this? Because I imagine there are different things that hold people back at different stages of life.
Yeah. That's a great question.
What's the average age of a client? I'm just asking all these questions, just firing from the hip.
That's fine. Yeah. Our average client is 46.
46. Okay.
I think there is, as in the sense that our members that are in their 50s, for example, they're a little bit more hesitant to complete a budget planner than a member who's in their early 30s. Yeah, right. I mean, we could spend a lot of time trying to work out why that would be the case. Maybe if I was to hazard any guess, it might be a case that there's an element of I've been doing this for a long, long time and things have been steady for a long time. Is there really a need to do it? I mean, we advocate there are two reasons why we would say, hey, you should absolutely be on a cash flow program. The first one is change, and that's pretty obvious. It's when we look at your overall situation and think, okay, as a function of your income you should be making much more financial progress than you are. And one of the obvious things is that your income is here and you're telling me that your savings, that singular metric, how much you're actually saving every month, is here. And that tells me that there's some problems in the system here. And the second is clarity. Sometimes we might put a member on our banking program, which is going through this spreadsheet and completing all of your information, not because we want to change your behaviors, but because we need to be sure about them. So let's imagine that we're trying to model the next 10 years, because in 10 years' time, we want to retire. And so we want to be really, really, really clear on when we can retire and what that's going to look like. Well, if you spend $100K a year, or you tell us that you spend $100K a year, when in reality you spend $116K a year, those numbers are totally different. And then your numbers change again as you retire, of course, for a whole heap of reasons. So, so yes, it is super important in both cases. But not always do we do it just for the purpose of change. Sometimes it's just actually just knowing the numbers.
And that's something we were talking about off air, that how many people overestimate or underestimate the numbers they're putting in their budget. Because I think my problem is I always underestimate it and it never goes to plan, because every month, like this month, I spent $500 at IKEA getting some new bookshelves installed and delivered. And so that was not in my budget, but I wanted it. And then I just write it off going, oh, this is a one-off expense. But every month there's a chunky-ish one-off expense that comes through.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Yeah, I take the view that there are pretty much no one-off expenses. Like, it's really seldom that you'd have a genuine one-off expense. The foundations in my house are a problem. How could I have known it's going to cost $15,000? That's a one-off expense. But for example, as we were talking about, the fridge that breaks down, that's horrible. That's a shame. And if you're looking at your cash flow on a week-to-week basis, sure, that's a one-off expense. But if you're taking a medium-term view over 5 years, you're going to have some appliances break over the next 5 years, and it's not unreasonable to apportion an amount to say, well, if that type of thing is happening, well, over the last 5 years, for example, what have I spent on appliances? And then let's use that and you average that out over 5 years, and we're going to have good years and bad years depending on what happens. So yeah, you're better pulling those into your budget and thinking that they're going to happen than not thinking they're going to happen and spending the surplus.
Yeah, I guess chances are I'm going to buy some more furniture in the next 5 years.
You can buy more books, which will need more shelves.
Are they all new books?
No.
Okay.
Collected over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's in boxes previously?
They've been unboxed out of the wardrobe now, and they're on the shelf. I'm very excited.
So let's talk a little bit about the course. So we mentioned there's a spreadsheet that people can get for free. There's obviously the videos that the two of you and Monique put together, which are great. But why would someone go into the course, and what would they get out of it?
Yeah, great question, mate. You go into the course because you either sense that you need to make some changes to your cash flow, firstly, or you go into the course because you want to be clear on your money. Yeah. In that, we were talking about personal trainers before and saying not everyone needs a personal trainer. Not everyone needs a budget planner. Yeah. But if you're looking at your finances, and if in the cold light of day you'd acknowledge that perhaps you should be getting better outcomes month to month based on the income that you're earning and your savings, or alternatively, if you're looking at some of these costs of living that we're experiencing right now and feeling a genuine sense of concern or about either where things are right now or how things are going to unfold in the future, or now that's clarity. So in both cases, you should definitely do that. In terms of what you'll get, well, you get a lot of clarity, obviously, and you get a tremendous amount of confidence too, in my experience, because if you know what the numbers are, despite the fact that you might be feeling like it's going to be a bit confronting to go through that and get the numbers, knowing them is all empowering in terms of having the confidence to make those big decisions, as well as having a whole heap of those kilometrics too around that deep dive of what's going to happen from a tax perspective, what's going to happen from a loans perspective.
Just a holistic, so it takes in all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and the videos really break down how to actually use the spreadsheet, because a lot of people open documents and feel a bit overwhelmed, but this actually walks through, and James also goes through a few examples on, well, if you're planning for maternity leave or paternity leave, or you're planning for a house upgrade, how do you input that and see what impact that'll have on your cash flow in the next 5 years, which is, I definitely haven't thought about my cash flow over the next 5 years, so I'm going to go through it personally myself.
Yeah. A lot of people are going to be looking at it with a shorter term lens. Like before this show, Matt, you were talking about interest rates, like this being a focus for people, because this is a real area of concern for people right now. So it's not lost on us that for a lot of people that download this course aren't necessarily going to be thinking about their lives in 2027 or 2025 or whatever. They're going to be thinking about what does the next 12 months look like, and that's cool.
Well, I haven't come across anything that kind of combines a budget with the milestones. So the milestones being like kids, like a wedding or marriage, maternity, paternity leave.
We even popped in a holiday to Fiji, didn't we?
We did.
Like a lot of people have those as like discrete budgets, if you know what I mean. Like there's like, okay, here's my general budget that I follow. But then here's this other thing that I'm projecting forward and trying to calculate for. I can't think of anything that I've come across where it does both in one. Does that make sense? So
You're welcome.
Cool. Okay, so you can download the spreadsheet if you go and you enroll in the free course, and you'll see videos of James explaining how every piece of it comes together and how you can maximize, I guess, the reward for your effort in doing this. As he says in one of the videos, it's not always easy. In fact, most people don't find it easy to kind of switch on the light and look at their finances with a fine-tooth comb. So be patient with yourself, give yourself some empathy, and understand that it's okay to be overwhelmed at first. But please, we think it's a fantastic practice to get into, just try and work through that. I think one of my key takeaways from this conversation, James, is the idea of progress over perfection. And so it's a free course, so there's no barrier there. You can just enroll and start to work through it. I think that's exciting for folks, Kate.
Yeah, and James said most people can get through the budget spreadsheet in 1 to 2 hours and go through all the projections there. If you add watching the videos from the course, it'd probably take another hour on top of that. So in maybe 2 to 3 hours, you've got confidence over your finances and you can make some decisions from there, which is a fantastic starting point.
Absolutely it is. So James, from Northeast Wealth, mate, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and join us in the studio, but also work on the course. It's really exciting.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to share this. And I hope for all of you listening, if you do download the course, I feel really confident that you're going to get some great outcomes here and get a much better lens over something that's really, really important right now. So thank you.
Absolutely it is. And Kate, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for listening, everyone.